these skills are not things that are written down. This is just basically, grandma, grandpa teaching, mom and dad teaching, son and daughter. And if that chain breaks, then that particular skill is lost.
Hello and welcome to the Real Estate, Wine, and More podcast. I'm your host, Howard Fletcher. I'm a real estate advisor with Engel & Folkers and Tysons, and I bring buyers and sellers of residential real estate together in the Washington metropolitan area, better known as the DMV. And in today's episode, I will be visiting with Deborah Myers of VirtuArte. VirtuArte is an internet company that helps its clients who value relationships invest in them by gifting unique, handcrafted works of art. And Deborah gets these works of art from developing nations that are all over the world, but I'll let her tell you about that because she can do a much better job of it than I. As listeners of this podcast know, one of the things I love about the DMV is the diversity of culture and the variety of choices one has as a result of living here in such an eclectic mix. Deborah's journey on her way to founding her company is a perfect example of the wealth of edifying experiences that are available to those of us who live here and work here in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area. So with no further ado, here's my conversation with Deborah Myers of VirtuArte. This is episode 5, VirtuArte, Developing a World of Gifting. I'm here on a beautiful Capitol Hill neighborhood on a day, this is the day of the Michael Cohen hearing. So this is probably one of the most busy days to come up to Capitol Hill, but it was a nice drive in. And I'm here with Deborah Myers. And Deborah, tell me about your business. What do you do?
So I am the founder and CEO of VirtuArte. And so we work with artisans in developing countries, and I specifically chose developing countries. And then I import their jewelry, fashion accessories, which include scarves, shawls, handbags, those types of items, and home and office decor items. And then I work with individuals, businesses, organizations to help them be more thoughtful gift givers and showing appreciation to their clients and employees.
Wow. So tell me about yourself first. How did you decide to go into this business? Did you have a background in retail or importing, or tell me about it?
No, I had no, I had no experience in retail. No, as I tell people, no experience in retail, no experience in e-commerce, websites, or anything like that. I am originally from San Diego, California. My mother was Mexican and my father is American of German descent. I graduated undergraduate from UCLA and then had the opportunity to come to Washington to work on the very first Reagan-Bush inaugural.
Wow.
I was supposed to stay here. I volunteered, and I was supposed to stay here 6 weeks. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, I was offered a position, and I decided that, well, okay, that would be interesting. Mm-hmm. I spent the next 2 years working, at the Small Business Administration. Then I went over to the Department of Commerce, and I ended up then being seconded to the Office of Public Liaison, and so I worked in the east or the west wing of the White House. So after 2 years, I thought, okay, this has been a lot of fun. I did really interesting things, but now I really have to think about whether what I'm going to do as a career. And I got a phone call and went over to see the HR department of the Inter-American Development Bank, which is like the World Bank but focuses mainly on Latin America. And they offered me a job. And so that's really where I started my interest in developing world issues. I got my first opportunities to travel, and I found that I just absolutely loved traveling. And then so through my travels, I was out everywhere I went. I shopped because I wanted to see what was new, interesting, and unique for that particular location that I was in. I worked there 10 years. Then I went into the private sector. I worked for a French company, multinational company, an American multinational company, and then a British multinational company. And all of those companies, I still did worked in developing country issues, which allowed me to travel and continue to go to new places and again, as I said, shop. I got to a point in my career about when I went into the private sector about 15 years later, and I was like, okay, this is the time that either I can continue doing the same thing that I'm doing, because the last position I held was the head of government affairs for the vaccine business of GlaxoSmithKline.
Wow.
And so I said, okay, I can continue doing this, or maybe this is the point where I say, okay, it's time to do something completely different. I tried to continue to do the same thing, and the universe has its way of
letting you know.
Yeah, things happening.
Right.
So I ended up taking a severance package, and at the time I was living in Brussels, Belgium, and moved back to the U.S. And then it was like, okay, now what am I going to do? I did some fundraising. I did consulting work. I worked for a nonprofit, but yet hadn't found my passion. So as I said, I took a think weekend and said to people, don't call me. This is my weekend. And I asked myself the famous question of, if you can do anything that you would like in life, irregardless of money, what would that be? And that is a pretty hard question to answer.
Yeah.
So I started out my list with a long list of things that I didn't want to do. And then finally started moving into, okay, well, I still wanted to do something that was involved internationally. I still wanted to do something that I could travel, work with women, have a economic development impact. And then it was, well, I'd like to shop. I have, these items that I had purchased from different artisans. People were saying to me at the time, but it had to be tested, that they liked my style. People would say, oh, where did you get that? Where did you get that? Could you get me one?
Right.
And so that's when I decided then, okay, maybe I can put my passion and my experience together, and started working on what evolved into VirtuArte.
Well, let me say first that I'm going to have to come back and do a podcast with you about learning what to do when you want to make a career transition, because I think you did it very well. I mean, there was that little breakdown was excellent. So what year was that? When did you make the decision to?
So I made the decision to leave GlaxoSmithKline at the end of 2007, early 2008. Mm-hmm. So I came back to Washington because this is where my home was, and I figured I had a circle of friends. Now the interesting thing is, of course, that when I came back, I was coming in and out of Washington frequently, and I was traveling extensively in my job, and I was changing. And so when I came back, I realized I had to rebuild my whole social network and my network in general, but my social network, yes. Because people had moved on, were doing different things, and I was doing different things. So that was also a rude awakening, because I figured I'd just come back and just start right in where
you left off.
Yeah, where I left off. So it took 2008 and then 2009 2008 was, as I said, going along and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then when I decided to start VirtuArte, I started from scratch, so from zero. And so it took me much longer to get everything into place than I had anticipated. And people, when I started talking about this, said, it will take you longer than you think. And I was like, oh no, not me.
Right.
So it did. And I so officially launched in 2010, but let me tell you, I mean, that in itself, I had, a website built that, really didn't work. And, so there were a lot of, bumps, hills, setbacks along the way.
Yeah. My question was going to be, how did your business evolve from what you first thought you were going to do, your first epiphany of this new you, and what has gone along the way? How has it developed along the way?
So I was quite naive when I started, because I believe, like a number of people who start a small business, and particularly at that time where the internet was still, it was not brand new, but still evolving in terms of how it was going to be used in a business. So my view was, okay, I'm gonna have a website. I'm gonna have my products on my website, and people will find me and they'll just buy.
Right.
Well, no, and I'm still not, but I'm more comfortable now. But I was not a networker. I had, all of my positions had been where I was, behind the scenes, putting together events, promoting, the president of the division or the president of the company. So I was not the out front face of the business. So networking just was not comfortable for me at all. I was not comfortable going to places that I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know anybody. Then talking about my business, I could make every excuse in the book why not to go. I would sign up for one, and then I'd say, "Oh, it's too cold. Oh, it's raining. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, But one day, probably about a year and a half into, I was making some sales, but I realized that people didn't know me. People didn't know my company. People didn't know my brand at all. I wasn't a Nordstrom's. I wasn't Saks. And how did I expect, if people didn't know me, how did I expect them to come to a website and trust? And this was before we really had all these issues of hacking and identity theft, and trust that I was who I said I was, and that if they put their credit card information in, that they were going to get the item that they thought they were going to get, and B, that I wasn't going to scam them.
Right.
So that was really at the first point that I realized, okay, I have to get out and network, which was, as I said, scary for me. So the one group that has really helped me is BNI, Business Networking International, I guess is the title of it. And I was invited to go to one as a guest, and I thought, this isn't for me, because of course it was all the things that I didn't feel comfortable doing.
Right.
And a friend of mine, she had been in one group and then joined another group and called me up, and she goes, I think this would be really good for you. And so I went, and I strung it out longer than you're supposed to, and I kept going back as a guest, and then finally they just said, look, either you have to join or you can't come back. That's the bottom line. So I said, okay, for a year, I'll do this for a year, and I will see what happens. And at the end of the year, if I don't want to rejoin, I don't have to. That first year was just was an incredible growth experience for me personally, because I had to. So one, I was now committed to go someplace every single week. So I had to get out of my house, be outside, be no longer hiding behind my computer. So that was really important. Secondly, I had to talk to people I didn't know. Thirdly, I had to talk about my business. And it took me a good 9 months, because I say my business is not your typical B&I type of business. I'm not the plumber. I'm not the mover. I'm not the insurance person. So it took me a good 9 months to start talking about how to talk about my business, that it would click with people. And once it clicked, then I could see the potential of that kind of a group. At the same time, I started out again, going to sell product to people. And I was working with somebody who was involved in marketing, and he said to me, okay, what differentiates you from, other people who sell items from, artisans from developing countries? And I was like, oh, that's a really good question. I don't know,
Right.
And so he said to me, so why don't you think about the whole angle of gift giving? Because he said, for most people, gift giving is an obligation. It's a chore. They dislike it. They don't know what to do. And he said, if you can get people to really start thinking about, gift giving as a way to strengthen their personal and business relationships through thoughtful gift giving, not, buying a gift card or, giving something promotional with their logo on it, that could be a really great, differentiator in terms of your business. So I started moving in that direction, and it has been extremely rewarding for me.
Good. We'll be right back after this. I'll say it again. I love making this podcast. It's a fantastic way to meet new people and to learn more about this area, the DMV, that I love so much. This episode was recorded at a beautiful row house on Capitol Hill, and that's a part of town that I absolutely adore. Did you know that last month, that would be January of 2019, that the average selling price of a house on Capitol Hill increased 24% over January of the previous year? In short, folks, what I'm trying to tell you is that houses are selling at a premium in the middle of winter. That means it's a great time to sell. So if you're thinking of selling a home, or buying a home, or both, please call me, Howard Fletcher of Engel & Folkers. I would love to discuss your options with you and to tell you the market value of your current home or the houses of the neighborhoods that you're considering moving to. You can reach me at my email, which is howard.fletcher@evusa.com, or call me at 301-233-2845. My information is always in the show notes. Or just Google my name, Howard Fletcher, along with real estate, or Howard Fletcher along with podcasts, and I guarantee I'll be the first one on the page. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Now, back to the show. Let's talk about your business.
Okay.
Let's talk about developing countries first.
Okay.
Now, your background, your story, first thing I must say, as a native Washingtonian, that is a Washington story. I don't know many cities in the country where, and it's very typical of people who live and work and have spent a lot of years in Washington, working for a government event or for the government, and then going into the nonprofit sector, and then going to work for agencies. And it gives you a wide range. That's why I love this town. Mm-hmm. It gives you a wide range of experience. It's a very international city. And you were able, through your experiences and your jobs, to actually go to these countries.
Right.
So what defines a developing nation to you? How do you choose the countries that, obviously, I guess you're not going to Paris to go get anything.
Right.
So what's your criteria to choose a country?
Well, as I said, so I started my international career working at the Inter-American Development Bank. Mm-hmm. So I classified developing countries as not Europe, not the U.S., not Canada, not Australia, New Zealand. So the higher income countries, I guess. Now, some countries that I would still classify. The G8, the G8, but then, even some countries in what was formerly Eastern Europe, are now, to to the point that I wouldn't consider them or classify them as developing countries. So I spent a lot of time in the what I call the lower income countries. So I have traveled to and spent time in 72 countries.
Wow.
And I've been in Africa, Latin America, Asia. I haven't really spent that much time in the Middle East. I've been to Jordan, but the Middle East is just a really difficult place for a woman, as you can imagine, to travel. And then a lot of the issues that have been happening in the 90s and the 2000s, just make it not a place to travel to. And but some of those countries like Saudi Arabia and the area where Dubai is, those are really developed countries too.
Yeah.
So there's
Kuwait and other
yeah. So I guess I classify countries that still are struggling to have a viable workforce, creating jobs, and aren't struggling with issues of hunger and starvation. Now, at one point when I, in the 80s, when I was working at the Inter-American Development Bank, Venezuela was a highly developed country and seemed to be going in the direction that it would move out as South Korea has moved out of being classified as a developing country. But we see what's happening now, and it's just it's really sad. It's just really sad to see that a country with so many natural resources is just really.
So when you go in these countries and you seek out these artisans that are creating the items that you sell, do you try to buy direct from them? How's that usually work?
So it depends. So I try and buy directly from them. Because then I know the money's going directly to them, which is critical. Sometimes they are members of a co-op or some type of an organization, which then I will deal with them. And sometimes that's easier because that entity then has easier times of shipping product. And and dealing with all the issues that have to be dealt with in terms of exporting from a country. I will go and I will travel to I'll visit because I'm looking for higher end pieces. So I'm not looking for the things that you would find at your airports or those souvenir type of things. So I will go and visit museum shops. I'll go to the national museums. I'll go to museum shops. I'll go to the high-end hotel boutiques and look at what they have there. I've gone to galleries. I was in South Africa. I was in Franschhoek, which is like the wine, this town within the wine area of the Western Cape, and went into a gallery and fell in love with some blown glass pieces. And so they helped me then to connect with the artist. And then I've been able to purchase, from the artist. I also have friends who live in various countries that are always on the lookout. And then there's two other big, I guess, shows I would say that I go to. So in July in Santa Fe, they hold the International Folk Art Market, which the International Folk Art Alliance brings in artisans from all over the world. So they do bring some from Europe, but all over the world for a 4-day kind of outdoor market to sell their products. And they're very much on the same mission as mine in terms of they want to help these artisans generate a sustainable income so that they're passing down their traditional skills from generation to generation, because this is something that I also found as I was working in these countries, and therefore preserving their culture. In certain places, they've gotten to the point that the younger generations don't see that they can make a sustainable income by learning the carving or the jewelry making or the weaving. So what they do is they end up trying to migrate out of the villages into the big city to get better jobs, and then many times end up in worse situations than if they had stayed in their village. And these skills are not things that are written down. You know, this is just basically, grandma, grandpa teaching, mom and dad teaching, son and daughter. And if that chain breaks, then that particular skill is lost, and then very hard to reconstruct or rejuvenate. And then because most of these skills and these products are ingrained in their culture, so countries are then losing pieces of their culture. So that's also one of the reasons why I selected developing countries, is because for me, I believe it's really important that they maintain these skills, and they maintain their culture. There's a group also that has puts together a show in New York in August, and so I will go there. So both in Santa Fe and in New York. I'll walk the aisles. I'll just walk the aisles and see product, and and what catches my eye. Talk to the artist and or the people that are working with them, and so that's also how I find product.
Now, I assume, like most retailers or people who have shops, there are some pieces there or items that become more popular than others.
Absolutely.
When you have something that's very popular and it sells out, or you want to maintain that on your website, how does that go? Do you have to return to that country, or have you been able to set up some way to be able to make that transaction overseas?
Yes. So I've now set up a way to make that transaction. And so that's also a really crucial question, because so when I see something, people ask me, so I don't bargain with the artists. Because my whole mission is to help them generate a sustainable income. And so by going in and saying, no, I'm not going to pay X, I'll pay you Y, defeats the whole purpose.
Right.
So I don't bargain. I ask them what their price is, and then of course I need to do a rough calculation in terms of shipping and all the other costs that I have to put into it to see if I can in fact charge a price that makes sense. And then I also have to remember what else I have that may be similar, because I can't have something that's two pieces that are similar and one's priced at $100 and the other priced at $20. That again doesn't, that won't work. If I can't make it work, then I explain to the artist, it's just not going to work, and I won't buy it, because again, I don't want to bargain with them. I view that as also devaluing, their work. They put time, they put effort. There's a lot of cost, and it's not just monetary, but other resources that go into it, and that's just not, for me, it's not fair to them.
Sure.
So then becomes the question, when I reorder, I am very careful to make sure that if I increase the volume, that I will be able to maintain the volume. Because again, as the volume is increasing, they're teaching new people skills. And if I can't maintain it, then once again, I am defeating my whole purpose. Yes. What I have seen by major retailers, and this is one of the reasons why I don't sell to major retailers, is because they're very fickle is the best way, so they'll see something, but it's only for a season or two. It's they're not going to be developing a long-term relationship with the artist. Yes. Which is what I'm doing. And a major retailer is looking for a large quantity of something, and then that's it. They won't come back. So in order for that group or that artist to be able to meet the order, he or she needs to train a number of people, and then that's it. And so then these people have had the anticipation, expectation that they will be continuing to work in this area. And when the retailer doesn't come back, it's just not there. So that's why for me, it's very, very important to continue as I increase my volumes to be able to maintain that particular volume.
Now, have some of these artists who have been able to grow their work because of your efforts been able to then also use that developed skill of larger scale production to sell to other people?
Yes, right. Which is ultimately what what we want is
Sure.
that they increase their business. Yeah. So yes, the answer is yes. And so for me, for VirtuArte, then there are certain pieces that are just made, for VirtuArte. Mm-hmm. And yes, and then they do, they've increased their, customer base, which is fantastic.
Wow.
And plus, then also, as you see, they are generating income. So then you see them and their ability to send their children to school, have better health care, yes. Improve their homes, yes. And so that's all part of what. Originally when I said I wanted to do something that had an economic development impact, this is that,
Yeah. Well, that's a large part also, or a part of, as I'm sure your marketing,
right.
of to do business with you. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, at least I know myself, and a lot of other people look for that.
Right. Well, and I'm, and I tell the stories. Mm-hmm. And when somebody buys something from VirtuArte, whether it's for personal use or as a gift, they will get a handwritten card that talks about the artist, how the product was made, and where it came from, which is again something that I started early on as a to differentiate myself. Mm-hmm. And the cards are handwritten, and what happened was that those cards became a really important part of the whole experience.
Absolutely.
So people who came, then were repeat customers, the first thing they would say to me, and of course the card's going to be in the box.
Right.
And I'd say,
where's my
yes,
card?
Yeah. Yes, the card will be in the box. So yeah, for me it is very important. And on my website, is the stories of the artists, and how to connect, and you can connect from product to to artist, mm-hmm. And that was also a really important part of for me of the business. But going back to what I said about when I started not being comfortable being the face of the business. Mm-hmm. So I said, this is not about me. This is about my artists. This is about the products. Mm-hmm. And then as a small business owner, and I had to learn that I had to be the face.
Yes.
Because, and even now my website is being redone, but it was difficult and is difficult to find me, mm-hmm. on the website, but mm-hmm. I've become more comfortable with that.
Well, you're certainly a fine advocate for these artists. And
thank you.
As somebody who used to play around with paint, and I'm not a painter, but I play around with paint. I know how, and I have a lot of friends who are artists as a result. I know how important that is to have a patron out there or someone in your corner. So mm-hmm. that's to be lauded. I know that when we spoke, when I first met you, mm-hmm. that you have a trip coming up, right. to go buy some stuff.
Yeah.
Is this a trip where you know where you're going and you know what artists you're going to see, or are you just going to see what's there?
So this trip it's being sponsored by the International Folk Art Alliance. Mm-hmm. So this group out of Santa Fe.
Okay.
And so we're going to Oaxaca, Mexico. Oaxaca's in the southern interior part of Mexico. And it is a place that I've wanted to visit for a long time. As I said earlier, my mother was Mexican. I've been to Mexico, mm-hmm. but I have not been able to get down to the southern area. And Oaxaca is very well known as a center for handcrafted art. So last year I took a trip sponsored by the same group to Cuba. And the woman who was the guide on that trip said she was putting this trip together for Oaxaca, And I didn't even think twice. I just said, put me on the list.
Right. Yeah.
So they have decided the artists that we're going to go and visit. And some of them I know of. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go.
From the Santa Fe show? Is that how you know of them? Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to go. I wanted to see their work. Also, for many years now, I had, Paul and I had collected these hand-carved wooden kind of mythical animals that also are very, and then hand-painted in very bright colors and things. And those also come from Oaxaca, very well, known in from that area. So I knew there was a number of different items. And then the woman who's going to guide us, she is a ceramicist herself, and she had lived in Oaxaca for a couple of years. So I knew she would really know, where to go.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving a week from this coming Tuesday, so the 12th of March. I'll be there for 10 days. The trip itself is 8 days, so we're going to spend 5 days in the city of Oaxaca, and then 3 days out in the countryside visiting artists. And then I decided to stay 2 extra days because if I see people that I want to talk to, I want to be able to go back and spend some time with them and see more of their work. And also, what's really great is that these artists will be we'll be able to see them making the the various pieces. So I'm really excited about this trip. And then people have told me that Oaxaca has become a food destination. So that's just kind of an added bonus for me. I mean, I love Mexican food.
Yes.
So I don't care whether it was going to be high-end cuisine or not. I just love Mexican food.
Wow. So Oaxaca, is it in the mountains, or is it on the coast?
No, it's in the mountains.
It's in the mountains.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's excellent. Wow. Okay. Well, I don't want to end this without doing 2 things. One, let everyone know how they can find VirtuArte, find you, and also give them a little description of what kind of pieces that you have on the website right now, and what you hope to, if there's anything out there that you're hoping to find that you haven't gotten yet.
Okay. So you can find VirtuArte at virtuarte.com, and it's virtuarte.com. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn. And what you'll find on the website is you'll find jewelry so on the website right now, there's probably works from maybe 45 different artists from 20 some different countries. So you'll find jewelry, you'll find silver, you'll find brass, then things made out of resin. And one of the things I understand is that there's a artist in Oaxaca that makes jewelry out of paper.
Wow.
And so I'm really excited and interested to see that, because that would be something completely new. And I do have some customers who like very statement pieces, but also then want them light. So this could be a really great item for them. You will find, as I said, what I call fashion accessories, so scarves, shawls, some handbags, cosmetic bags, items in that area, and then what I call my home and office decor items. So you'll see wood carvings, you'll see ceramics, you'll see baskets, things made out of from Haiti, recycled steel drum, reverse painted glass boxes from Peru. So there's just a wide array. And I will be looking for more of home and office decor, because as I work with businesses, those are really the items that they're looking for in terms of giving as board gifts or client thank you gifts. So we are definitely that area is going to be expanding.
Okay.
One last thing I would like to say.
Please.
So I will be doing at the end of April, on the 30th of April, an event here. I call my gallery on Capitol Hill, to talk about my trip to Oaxaca, to show pictures and probably some videos of the artists that I take, and to probably have I'm believing now will be margaritas, but whatever the drink is that is the traditional drink and food. And so if you're interested, we will be putting up the information on the website, also on our Facebook page. So please check it out. And if you're inclined to come, we'd love to have you.
Well, Deborah Myers, I'd like to thank you for your time. Thank you for inviting me to your lovely home. I will definitely be checking out for when that exhibition is going to be.
All right.
Looking forward to seeing what the drink in Oaxaca is. It might be margaritas, who knows. And thanks a lot. Good luck on your trip.
Travel
safely. And I want to tell everyone I've been to the website. There's some great items there, so I'd highly recommend that you go see it. Thank you very much, Deborah.
Thank you.
Well, that's another show and another reason why I love the DMV. I would like to thank Deborah Myers for being on the show and inviting me in her lovely home. If you have an interest in learning more about VirtuArte and Debbie's awesome selection of gifts, please check the show notes. The company's website is listed there, and it'll be well worth your time. Listen, I would love to hear from you. If you want to contact me about real estate or this podcast, please email me at howard.fletcher@evusa.com. Something you can do that'll help me a whole lot, especially if you listen to me on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, is to please rate this episode and also subscribe. If you like it, please tell your friends about it and ask them to give me a listen too. I would very much appreciate it. I want to grow this podcast as much as possible because, as you know, I want to take over the world. The Real Estate, Wine, and More podcast is a production of the Fletcher Group Incorporated, made in association with Engel and Folkers, Tysons and Lansdowne. Music for this episode was supplied by Cadillac Grip. If you're ever in the Boulder or Denver, Colorado areas, go see Cadillac Grip play. Because if you ain't hip to the grip, you just ain't hip. The Real Estate, Wine, and More podcast was written, recorded, engineered, produced, and screwed up by me. I'm Howard Fletcher, your friendly neighborhood real estate advisor. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.